Welcome to Hell on Earth. Hello, welcome back to All Things Gumball. I haven't made a video for a while. Feels like about a month. Might be less than a month, maybe 3 weeks or so. So what am I going to talk about today? Let me tell you a story. This is not going to be the traditional, vending machine business video. I'm not going to talk much about the vending business. What I'm going to talk about is things that are going on in the world today. I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a funny story because I think everybody needs some enjoyment, entertainment, something that will lift their spirits. I talked a little bit about how I drove a cab in the past when I was younger. I drove for about 10 years as a cab driver. And most of the time I would never pick up from radio calls. There's a dispatcher. The dispatcher would call out. Now it's a little bit different. You've got everything computerized, so they send the call right to your computer. Back when I worked, they would just throw the calls out into the air, and whoever was nearby would grab it. And if you didn't want the call, if it was in a bad neighborhood, you would ignore it. And I was driving through the downtown area, downtown Dallas, and the weather was perfect. It was probably 75 degrees outside, Fahrenheit. There was a call that went out over the radio saying that somebody needed a cab in an area that I knew was pretty negative. It was kind of a ghetto or rat-infested area. It was just a disgusting area, just run down. You think about drug dealers and things like that. That's kind of what you picture in your mind when you think of this neighborhood. And the weather was perfect. The sun was out. There was hardly any clouds in the sky. And I had my windows down in my car, which I always do. I love the fresh air. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to pick up this call. I know it's in a bad neighborhood, but I'm in a good mood, I'm going to pick up this call. Let's see what happens. I'm always, I'm always interested in an adventure, So I drive over there. It's a hotel. It's a little hotel where the door of your room is right by the parking lot. So you park your car, you walk a couple steps, and you're right there in your room. It's not a nicer hotel where you walk down a hallway where it's carpeted. Those are a little more secure. You feel a little more safe. But this one, you pull up, the door is 3 or 4 feet away from the car. I got out, knocked on the door. I said to the guy, I'm ready, come and get in my cab. He got in the cab. Now I had a van, like a little minivan. And this guy, he was big. He was big. He was a black guy. He was huge, like a football player. And he got in the back seat of the car, not the back seat, but he got in the seat behind me. And I started driving. He told me where to go. I started driving. And he was kind of mumbling his words. I didn't really get what he was saying, but I heard a couple of things that really caught my attention, and not for the positive. He said something about girls' panties, and he said something about being uncomfortable, and I didn't really catch what he was talking about. Like I said, he was mumbling, but I just got this creepy feeling that something weird was going on. So he told me where to go. I'm driving, and I'm creeped out by him already. And we get to the location where he wants to go, and he jumps out of the car, and he runs over to the front door, and he knocks on the door. Now, I heard girls' panties, and I heard uncomfortable. And I thought this guy, while I wasn't looking, because I didn't want to look, I thought this guy took his clothes off, took his underwear off, and they're laying on the floor, his nasty, dirty underwear. They're laying on the floor back there. So while he was out at the door, knocking on the door, I looked back to see if his nasty underwear were on the floor, and no, they weren't. Thank God for that. Okay, so nobody answers the door where he went. He gets back in the cab, and he says, take me somewhere else. He wanted to go to another place, a second place. So I thought, all right, no problem. Meter's running, I'm making money. We go to a second place, And this time he gets out of the car and he runs behind the building. It's a house. He runs around to the back side of the house. Now, if you want to not pay for a cab, that's what you do. You run around to the backside and maybe you duck through the bushes or whatever. And for a minute there, that's what I thought he did. I thought this guy is going to, abandon me, abandon paying, not pay for the cab. And on top of that, I'm thinking to myself, I'm in the middle of the worst neighborhood in Dallas. I kept looking around to see if anybody was coming, and I thought, this guy's not going to come back. And I'm going to be screwed out of the fare, which it wasn't that much at that point. It was probably like $10 or whatever at that point. But I'm going to get robbed at gunpoint. And so I thought to myself, I'm going to leave this guy if he doesn't come back in 1 minute. I gave the guy he was already gone a minute. I figured I'd give him another minute. And if he doesn't come back, I'm leaving and let him deal with getting a ride back to the hotel. Well, a minute went by, and he comes back, and he gets in the cab. And I thought, good. At least I'll get paid. We can get out of here. And this is what he said. He said, let's go back to the hotel where you picked me up. And I thought, okay, good. And he said, none of the people that I wanted to visit were in their homes. And I said, okay. Now, this is a couple of years ago. This is probably 10 years ago, this story. So we went back to the hotel, and I parked right by the door where his room was, and he gives me a credit card, and he jumps out of the car, and he runs inside of the room where he's staying at the hotel. And I looked at the card, and it said Jerome Sanchez, something like that. And I thought, well, he's a black guy. Jerome sounds correct, but the Sanchez part doesn't sound correct because Sanchez, that's kind of Hispanic, And I thought, well, this is kind of strange. But I ran the credit card through the machine, and the machine accepted the payment. And I thought, okay, good. And it printed up a receipt, and I just needed a signature. So I went to the door. I needed to give him back his credit card. I went to the hotel door, and I knocked on the door, and he comes to the door, and he doesn't really open it very wide, but he goes he sticks his hand out, and he goes, come inside. And it was like a friendly gesture, and I'm trusting of people, so I just thought, all right, I'll go inside, My curiosity got the better of me. And I went inside, and after I told this story to other people, they said to me, you should be glad there wasn't 10 guys in there that wanted to kick your butt and beat the crap out of you. Yeah, I am lucky. So I walk in, and I'm telling you the honest truth. He was in only a pair of underwear. That's all he was wearing. Let me repeat that. I walked into the room, and all he was wearing was a pair of underwear. And what they were young girls' panties. They were small girls' underwear. And I thought, oh my God, this guy's huge. He's like a huge black guy, and he's wearing these little girls' panties. And I guess that's what he was talking about when he got in the cab in the beginning, and he said something about these little girls' panties are really uncomfortable or something like that. But anyway, there I was, and I thought, okay, I got to be professional. I'm not going to make a big to-do of this. And I said, sir, all I need is a signature, and that's all I need. Thank you. So he signed it, and I took it, and I stuck it up in my pocket, and he was laying on the bed. After he signed it, he went and he lay down on the bed, and he was all stretched out, nice and kind of sexy, Kind of picture Titanic, the movie Titanic, when Leonardo DiCaprio was drawing Rose as she lay there on the couch with her breast showing. And that's kind of what I pictured that's what I saw, basically. Just this big black guy in a pair of girls' panties laying there on the bed. And he had his wallet there on the bed next to him, and he pulls $40 out and he lays it on the bed there. And he said to me, that's for you. And I don't know, I was curious. I should have just ran away, but I was curious, and I said, what's that for? I was hoping he would just say it's a tip. And I said, what's that for? and there was a couple of people on the television that were doing oral sex. A woman was doing oral sex on a man, and he just went like this. He was pointing at himself and the TV and himself and the TV, and he just went back and forth and back and forth. And I was shocked. I thought, no, that's not going to happen. And I said, no, sorry, I'm not into that. Sorry. And I started to leave. And his demeanor became very, very childlike, almost like a little child, just like a 5-year-old child, and very apologetic. Oh, I'm so sorry. Did I offend you? And I'm like, no. I'm not offended. I just don't have any interest in that kind of activity. I took my receipt, went outside, got in my taxi cab, and I left. And that's probably one of the strangest stories that ever happened to me as a cab driver. And as I said, I wanted to share that with you because I know that in this time, this day and age, we're going through a lot of struggle. And people are worried about the future. People are worried about how they're going to make money and how they're going to pay their bills. I want to tell you a story. When I was roughly 18 and 19 years old, I was introduced to marijuana. And the first time I smoked it, I was kind of shocked. I was kind of frightened by what I was experiencing. And I overheard a couple of my friends, whispering to each other, and they said, this is the first time, they were whispering, this is the first time Neil ever got high. They knew that I had never gotten high before because I told them. So when I heard that, then my brain just kind of took a back seat and said, okay, let's examine this thing that you're doing or going through. Instead of freaking out, let's just examine what's going on. And so I took a back seat, or my brain took a back seat, and I started examining what I was feeling, what I was thinking, what I was experiencing. And one of the things that I noticed that marijuana affects you in a different way than alcohol, because alcohol affects your muscles, but marijuana affects your spirit or your soul or your mind. And I actually fell in love with marijuana. I really did. And I know that everyone's pushing for legalization of marijuana these days. But I'll be honest and say I haven't touched marijuana since I was 18, 19 years old. Honest to God. And if someone gave me a marijuana cigarette, a joint, gave me a joint, even today, and even if they gave me $100 and said, if you smoke this marijuana, I'll give you $100, I wouldn't touch it. And let me tell you what happened to me. I used to smoke marijuana every day when I first started, and I did it every day for 6 months straight, every day. I liked it. I liked the way it made me feel. I liked the way it made me think. I just really enjoyed the way, I enjoyed the experience. The last time I smoked marijuana, and I think that the marijuana was probably laced with PCP or something, because I think I had a hallucinogenic kind of experience. What happened to me was the last time I smoked marijuana, I had a very, 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 very bad trip or very bad experience. And one of the only ways that I can explain it to you, that you can understand what I went through, was look at this sheet of paper, okay? Now imagine that this sheet of paper is your life, okay? You have a beginning over here, over here, over here. You have an end. This is your life. And you have good and you have bad throughout your lifetime. You're not gonna have a lot of, you're gonna have a balance of good and bad. It's not like you're gonna have so much good or so much bad. You're gonna have a balance. Now imagine this dark spot here. See this dark spot right here? Imagine that's just the worst time in your entire life. This is the worst thing that you could ever go through in your entire life. Now, imagine if I'm going to rip this piece off. I'm going to lay this piece down. And let's say I take this tiny little piece right here. I take this little tiny piece. Can you see that? I took it off there. And let's say that I scoot it over here. Now it's at the age of when I was 19. So this is when I was born, this is when I'm 19, and the last trip that I experienced, I saw something very, very, very horrible. But the thing is, I only saw about 1/8 of a second of that thing, whatever it was. I don't know what it is. I don't really honestly know what it is, but I saw something very, 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 very horrible. I'm believing that it's something in the future, something that I'm going to experience in the future, and it's so horrible, and God took 1/8 of a second of that experience that I'm experiencing, and He just gave it to me when I was high. And so I thought to myself, I don't want to know anything more about, so here's what I did. I had time to think about this, because that experience, that revelation, or that premonition, or whatever you want to call it, that vision, whatever you want to call it, it happened to me at night after I had smoked marijuana, a couple of joints during the day. And this vision came to me in the middle of the night. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And I didn't smoke marijuana afterwards. And the next day, I thought to myself, if I smoke marijuana again, I might find out more about what that vision is. I may find out that it's, I'm going to jump out of an airplane because I want to learn what it's like to parachute, and my parachute doesn't open, but I don't die, and I break 50 bones in my body or something like that, and bust open my kidneys, or and I'm laying there on the ground, paralyzed, dying of pain. And I thought to myself, I don't want to know what's coming. I don't want to know what's coming. If something horrible is coming, I'd rather it be a surprise. I don't want to be dwelling on it for weeks or months at a time, or years at a time. So I decided to quit smoking marijuana. I will not touch marijuana. I don't want to see what will happen. And another thing that I thought it might be, I was born a month and a half early. Okay, I was only inside my mother's womb for 7.5 months. When I was born, it was 1964. The medical field was not as advanced as it is now. And my father, he's a doctor. He was our family physician as a kid. When I was a kid, he was our family physician. But my father said that when I was born, I was placed in an incubator, and I was taken care of and nursed over by nurses. I was, pampered by the nurses. But my mother didn't come to see me. My dad told me, I don't remember this, but my dad told me that my mother never came to visit me while I was in the hospital. And I was in the hospital for a month and a half. So that vision, I wonder if it's something that I'm remembering from the past, did I see a memory of being neglected and rejected and abandoned by my mother, who should be loving and generous and kind to her children? So I don't know what the vision is. I really don't know what the vision is. Is it something that's going to happen to me? Is it something that's going to happen to society? We hear things about a tribulation coming, according to the Bible, end of the world kind of thing. So I don't really know what it is. So again, I don't want to smoke marijuana because I don't want to know what's coming, if something is going to come. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because after this event from smoking marijuana that may have been laced with PCP and having this vision, after this happened, I started looking at the world a little differently. And I started to see that everyone suffers. Every person suffers. Every animal suffers. Every living organism suffers. You're not going to get out of this world without suffering. You're not going to you're not going to have a perfect, wonderful life. So everything that's happening in America and the world, this virus and all that, realize this, that everyone suffers. And in America, we have the belief that America's great, we're perfect, we're never going to suffer, we're always going to have a great life. But I told my daughters this. I said, one of the things I told them is, America has been blessed. We've had a great country. I mean, I'm 55. I've never seen a war in this country. I've never gone without food in this country. And I've never been outside of this country, so I've never gone a day without food. I've never gone a day without clean water. I've never gone a day where I didn't know where I was going to sleep. And I'm not saying that everybody's living like that. But in America, you have that opportunity to have food on your table and something to drink and a place to sleep and friends, and we don't have war. And there's a lot of countries in the world that are starving and that deal with war and deal with a government that's more tyrannical than America's government. So we have been truly blessed. And maybe what's happening to America is just God's way of showing us what the rest of the world is dealing with. We're not going to be on the top forever. We can't be. I mean, who can be on the top forever? I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings. I'm sorry if you're so patriotic and so in love with America. I love America too. But I can't believe that we're not going to suffer like everybody else in the world. And that's why I said everybody suffers. The plants suffer. The trees suffer when we cut branches off or fire surrounds them. Animals get abused and plants get abused and bugs get stepped on, and there's not one person and there's not one living organism that doesn't suffer. One of the things that I think about is we all suffer. Everyone suffers. And one of the things that I think about is, what's the worst thing you can suffer? I don't know, being in a concentration camp maybe, or being in a prison where you keep getting brutally beaten every day. But or what about being on an island where you're alone on an island and maybe you're having a hard time finding food? That would be difficult. Or, being in the mountain and you're freezing and you don't have a way to shelter yourself from a storm. Okay? Let's take a concentration camp. Okay? Like what Hitler did to the Jewish people. And Hitler didn't just do things to the Jewish people. He attacked the Catholics and he attacked the gypsies and so on and so forth. But picture yourself in a concentration camp where you're having a hard time finding food. There's hardly any food. There's hardly anything to drink. You're starving. You're freezing. You're miserable. You don't know if you're going to be murdered. You don't know if you're going to be tortured. Now, compare that to what's going on right now in your life. If you could make it through a concentration camp, then you can make it through what's going on today in America. America is not suffering yet. And I'm not saying that we will, but we might. But I think that God gives us a balance. He gives us joy and good times, but He gives us suffering also. I want to leave that with you guys. I want you to be encouraged. Keep on doing what you're doing. There may be a time where you can't go visit your vending machines, and that's, one of the great things about the vending machines is when this thing is over, you're probably going to still go back to your vending machines, and there's going to be money inside, and there's going to be candy inside, and you're going to be fine. You still have a way to make money with your vending machines. I'm thinking the same thing. I hope that helps you guys just with life in general. You can do it. You can make it through these hard times. Have a good morning, have a good evening, or have a good afternoon.